Hey everybody, this is Matt at pathofcourage.com. I wanted to talk about two scenarios today. These scenarios are more consequential, I think, than most people realize. Scenario one, child gets pushed on the playground by another child, scrapes their knee, there's blood and pain, and they're really hurt by the fact that this child did that. They run down the street to their house and they burst through the door and they're crying and they blurt out everything that's just happened. They point at their knee. In this first scenario, the parent says, "Come over here, let's sit down on the couch. Let's talk about this. Tell me what happened. How did you feel when that happened? That must have been horrible the way you were treated. Did you say anything, or did they say anything?" They talk about the feelings that got brought up. They talk about what this meant to the child, how they interpreted it. They help the child process what happened. And then, they comfort the child, of course, rub their back a little bit, tell them, I think you're going to be okay. And they reinforce the value of the child and the worth. Help them organize their feelings and their thoughts. And then they say, "Let's go to the bathroom and get a Band-Aid on you and clean you up, and you're going to be just fine." Maybe that takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Scenario two. Child gets pushed on the playground by another child and skins their knee. Same situation. There's blood and pain and crying. They run down the street home. They burst through the door crying and they point at their knee and say tell everybody what's happened. And the parent says, "Go to the bathroom. Under the sink there are Band-Aids and some antiseptic. Why don't you come back here? We'll clean that up and put the Band-Aid on you, and you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine." And that's what the parent does. They clean out the wound. They tell them, "You're going to be fine." Put the Band-Aid on and send the child on their way. I think we would agree that in both cases the child was not treated poorly. They were not abused. That they were not, the parents were not negligent as parents per se. They were living up to their duties as parents as they understood them. We could even say both parents love their children, or we can infer that. But I want you to imagine what's conveyed to these two different children in this scenario after, let's say, 1,000 repetitions of scenarios like this. Maybe it was a bad grade in class, and parent one sat down and said, "Well, let's talk about this. Do you like this class? Is it meaningful to you? Do you care if you do well? Are you feeling bad about yourself for this? What do you need support-wise?" Really processed it. And what if scenario two parent says, "Well, you just got to study harder. You're always playing video games. If you just went to your room and studied for that extra half hour like we've been telling you, you probably would have done fine in the test. You're smart enough." Right? Again, there's care, there's attention to the issue at hand, but it's different. And it's different in several important ways. One is, what are the feelings of the child? Are feelings important? Are they valid? Do they have any relevance whatsoever? What do you do with feelings? In scenario one, parent, you're learning that feelings do have value. They're information to explore. There's meaning to be found in feelings and what they're trying to convey to you. And sometimes there's distortions that need to be cleared up and addressed. Scenario 2 parent, unintentionally perhaps, is essentially conveying that feelings are not very important. Feelings are a byproduct of events. They're not relevant, or they're not central to events. And as a result, the child doesn't learn to process or even value. Some children grow up as adults and never even learn to even consider that their feelings are anything more than distractions. I've seen this many times. As a therapist, I've seen this many times in people with chronic anxiety. And people who have difficulty coping with stress after enough events occur. They kind of lose their capacity to cope. They've never been shown how to cope with intense feelings. Never been prepared for that. But there's another layer to this in the metaphysical realms, and that is when you begin to open up to consciousness and all that it can be, all the dimensions that can be explored of consciousness. One important channel of information, one way to get in touch with these other areas of self and consciousness are through feelings. And the more aware and sensitive one is to what their feelings are conveying to them, the more likely they are to be able to process psychic material, to develop intuition in a healthy way. So I really wanted to cover this because it stretches all areas of exploration. We're talking about people and consciousness and mental health and psychic and intuition, intuitive phenomena, all these different areas of the mind. I think we can agree that to block off the senses in this one critical domain of human experience, feelings and emotions, and what they mean for us, how they tie us to events and how they relate to our identity and sense of self. Feelings are critical in all of those ways, and for us to sort of black that out and then to say, okay, let's talk about intuition. There's a fat chance you're going to really be able to engage that conversation with much competence at all. Likewise, mental health. If you want to be a healthy individual, considering your feelings is going to be critical to that. So I wanted to address that situation, those two scenarios, and how consequential they can be over many iterations through childhood in developing the mind and developing the way people perceive the world and perceive themselves. It's the source of a lot of callousness that we find between adults. You know, my father treated me this way, it didn't do me any harm. You can see how real that perception can be. Again, scenario 2, parents didn't hate their kids, they weren't abusive. They just never really helped them develop this part of themselves. And so we often find compassion and gentleness and consideration to the deeper parts of people's minds missing in a lot of ways. Yes, you can be histrionic, you can exaggerate the importance of feelings. And I certainly wouldn't advocate that either, but that's a different discussion. The other piece I wanted to add to that is notice how, well, maybe you don't notice this, but I do as a therapist, that primarily these scenarios we're talking about the difference between the way little girls are taught to process events and the way little boys are taught to process events. And if you look at human development through this lens, this genderized way of processing events, you can understand more why in American culture in particular, we continually hear women complain that their husbands are trying to fix them. They're trying to fix the problem. They're not listening to me. It's like he doesn't even understand what feelings are. It's like I might as well talk to a brick wall, you know? he just wants to fix it, and if I won't do it his way, then he walks away. These kinds of statements are made so often in marriage counseling. Therapists have a running joke sometimes about how common this is. He's a fixer. He's always fixing. Why can't he listen to me? And men often have the complaint, all she wants to do is talk about her feelings. Nothing gets fixed. And there is a pattern of exaggeration in the way these different genders are taught to process their world. So obviously I'm advocating something more balanced and healthy. And especially if you haven't done that in childhood or didn't have that experience in childhood, I want to emphasize the opportunity in adulthood to engage that process, to begin addressing whether it was you lacked parents that taught you how to fix problems and think critically, or whether you had parents who lacked a real compassion and lacked the ability to really kind of teach you about feelings and the importance of yours and your identity. And I guess that's where I wanted to wrap up. Been sitting in the woods here for about a half an hour meditating, and that's the topic that I've been chewing on to some degree this week. I just wanted to kind of finally resolve. Hope you're enjoying pathofcourage.com, and I look forward to sharing many more ideas and experiences with you in future.